And welcome everybody to the Four Tales podcast, the only podcast where you're going to find two blurs talking to other comic creators about what they like. I am your host, Kyrun Silva from Taurus Comics. Across the way is a purple purveyor of Ace Blade, Danny J. Quick. How you doing, Danny?
Doing pretty good, man. I'm good. Happy to be back, man. You did last week's show without me, and I had to send in my video so that I can keep my numbers up. But I appreciate you including me last week at least.
No, I'm happy to have you back. It was. I will admit it was rough last week without you. I'm glad that we had Dan Bethel. I'm just realizing there are way too many Dans in my life at this point.
Yeah, right now you're having a Danwich.
A Danwich, absolutely.
I need to get some more friends, is what that tells me. But we do want to thank Dan for stepping in at literally the last moment. None of you guys know this, but last week or 2 weeks ago, Danny texted me at like 10 o'clock at night, the day before we recorded, saying, "Hey, I can't go. My family wants me to do something." So at the last moment, yeah,
they don't need to know this. I had to reschedule a driver's test with my daughter, and it was the only time that I had. She's trying to get her license, so I had to do it. But the people don't need to know that, Kyrun. Don't be putting me out there in the street.
All right. So, but what they do need to know is who we have on today. And we actually have, this is our biggest guest so far. He is the original artist for the comic book Bloodstrike. He's also done comic books like Spider-Man and Wolverine, He-Man. He did an amazing self-published book called The Grave a few years ago. He is a music video star. He's also worked with other music stars like Justin Timberlake, Beyonce, Taylor Swift, I think is one of those. He's a storyboard artist for TV shows like the ATL and Doom Patrol. He's also worked on movies like Transporter. And low-key, one of my favorite movies, Fantastic Four: Rise of Silver Surfer, only because I love the Silver Surfer. Everything else about the movie was crap. I'm sorry.
No, stop it. I love that. I love that one. I love that one. And don't forget about Dragon Ball Evolution. That's an important one too.
No, we try to forget about that. We try to forget about that. But if you haven't figured out who we have the Fragaboom himself, Dan Fraga. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for having me. I feel like a honorary blurred, honorary.
Well, I mean, you have to take the test first before you become honorary. So we have to.
Hit me with it if you want.
I haven't taken.
I wasn't ready.
Yet, so.
Oh shit!
We will email that to you after the show, and we'll get back to you with the results. Right. And if you get it, we'll mail you the blurred card.
I appreciate it.
But I mean, thanks for having me on. When I sent you out the request, I was like, I don't know if he's gonna do this because we're just two dudes talking. I don't know if he's really gonna want to be on this. But you and I have talked a lot over the years through Facebook.
Many years.
I know,
I've inked you, man. I've inked your work.
You have. Yeah. You inked. That's still hanging up on my wall, actually. Yeah. That was one of the best things I ever did, only because you inked it. So I appreciate that.
I had a lot of fun doing that.
But I mean, we want to just talk about what it is with comics and what got you into comics. So I guess let's start there. Like, how did you first get into comics? Because you did it really young, right?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a smaller town in Northern California called Martinez, and there wasn't really much to do. Your grand aspirations is you could work at the refinery or get out of town. And my idea was get out of town, but we also weren't a family of means. So, even though my grades were good, college wasn't really looking like it was going to happen because it just didn't look like it was going to happen. It wasn't something that I could afford, my family could afford. And with that, also in my youth, Christmas and birthdays were the time where we got hooked up with stuff, toys and things. Any other things that we wanted in our lives, we had to go and hustle and get ourselves. And one of the things that I really enjoyed as a kid and to this day was comic books. There was, at least when I started buying them, they were 55 cents. And,
it was back in the day.
Yeah, it was. And you can kind of get lost in a world, and I'd already been bit by the Marvel bug sort of, I'm sure it was in their planning back in '78. Marvel had these mall tours where they would send Spider-Man to your mall and you kind of get a picture with him. So when I was 5, I got to meet Spider-Man, got my picture, and then I saw him on Electric Company, and I was like, "That's that guy." Like I met him, and he was very real to me. And then, of course, Marvel had the Marvel Superheroes activity books. Those were really big at the time. These coloring books with introduction to Marvel superheroes. And then roughly around 82 or so, Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends came out. So I was, and my television station was replaying the 1967 Spider-Man, the one we love the theme song from. So I was all in on those characters, but the drawing came be out of necessity. When you don't have money, uh, and you want to explore your imagination, you draw. And I started copying things out of comics, and then I started thinking, well, what would happen if I invented my own and made my own stories? And then I had a great time doing it, and then I started sharing them with people, and I saw that the joy translated. It was kind of like a handoff of this joy. I did this thing, I handed it off. It would make my mom smile, my grandpa smile, my the kids at school that checked it out. And then roughly around 2000, no, 1988 was my very first convention I ever went to. It was WonderCon. It was in Oakland, California, and Stan Lee was there. And Marvel had just released this series of books, and at the time, it was a big deal. Trade paperbacks weren't like a thing, and they released something called Marvel Masterworks, and they were these hardbound, had a dust jacket with embossed gold leafing on it, and of course, I bought the Spider-Man and the Fantastic Four, and I needed to get them signed by Stan Lee, and I was, I drew a picture for him, and his line was long. His line was very long, and it extended into Artist Alley, and I thought, I'm going to talk to these artists, and I saw this one guy. He was drawing Hulk, a guy named Erik Larsen. Started rapping with him, and told him, I was going to give Stan Lee a drawing because I like to draw too. And he said, Stan Lee's going to throw that in the trash. And I said, he's not going to want to throw this one in the trash. He's going to want to keep it. And because I had belief, even at 14, I had belief that I was going to draw comic books. And he said, why wouldn't Stan Lee throw this in the trash? Why would he want to keep it? I said, well, because I'm gonna work for Marvel Comics one day. I'm gonna draw comics, and he's gonna remember like that kid, and he's gonna have that picture, and it's gonna be fun. And Erik Larsen said, well, let me see that drawing. He looked at it, and he looked at me, and he said, what do you do? I said, what do you mean? I'm a student. He goes, do you have a job? I said, yeah, I work at a pizzeria. I make pizzas. And his cold hard fact truth was, he said, you better make good pizzas because you're never going to draw comics.
Damn.
Savage.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys have ever seen Kill Bill, but there's when she gets mad, this Quincy Jones Ironside. I heard that in my mind when he said that. I didn't even know that song existed, but I heard that. It was like an alarm went off, and I got really, really driven, and I made it my goal. Not only was I interested in becoming a comic book artist, it was the only option, and I became hyper focused. Started studying things, John Byrne. Eventually, Todd McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, Michael Golden. And then I was so passionate about comic books that my junior year of high school, which was 89, 90, my AV AV, which is audio video, opened up. It was an elective, and you had a choice. You could take on different roles. You could be in the back in the broadcast room. Well, basically it was an after school thing where they put on this live television show, and it was like 2 hours of variety, right? And your choices were you could be a cameraman, a sound man, uh, behind the scenes running the boards, or you can create a show and host it. And I said, I want to host it. I want to make a show. So I created a show called Comic Review for You.
Mhm.
And I got a lot of my information from different comic trades like Comic Scene, Comics Journal, Comics Review, Comics Feature. And I would basically uh, give like the news that week, new comics coming out, if there was any movie news, that sort of thing. And I wanted to also create a little bit of variety where I did these sort of pre-taped things where I went out and visited a comic book store and talked about that, or go to a comic convention and get my portfolio reviewed and see what it was like to have a portfolio review. So in November of 89, November 19th, 1989, Pelicon, it was in San Francisco. The guests were none other than Erik Larsen, Rob Liefeld, Art Adams, Derek Robertson. And I had intended to bring, I intended to bring my stuff to Erik Larsen because I wanted to poke that bear. This guy told me I'd never be a comic artist. I wanted a portfolio review from him, and I wanted it on camera for the cold hard facts of it all. But sitting next to him was Rob Liefeld, who I'd never met before. I bought some of his books, and I really enjoyed his work. At the time, he had Amazing Spider-Man Annual 23 had just come out. New Mutants Annual had come out a couple months prior. What If number 7 had come out, and he had just in the previous year had done Hawk and Dove. So this is Rob Liefeld, pre-New Mutants, pre-X-Force, pre-Rob being Rob Liefeld. He's just this guy that I wanted to talk to. So Erik seemed really busy and agitated.
That's every time I've met Erik calls, he seems really agitated.
Yeah, that's like his thing. So he Rob did a portfolio review of my stuff. He did a portfolio review of my buddy Mike, and he also had a lot of stuff for sale. Pages from What If, pages from the New Mutants annual, and also a stack of drawings. Right, Rob did a lot of sketching, character sketches, and one of the pieces, like I didn't have much money. My friend Mike had a few dollars in his pocket, and he bought a sketch off of Rob, a pre-drawn sketch. It was a character designed for a character called Strife, who would later be featured in New Mutants and X-Force. It's Rob's design for Strife. My buddy bought it for $60.
Wow.
Does he still have that? Because that could be worth a lot.
Has it. He won't, dude, pry it from his dead hands, man. Like that's how he's holding it. But one of the
3 kids, if he wants one, he can have one for that.
Yeah. He might. But here's the interesting part of it is that Rob had done the sketch on the back of his personal stationery. So on the back of this piece of paper was Rob's name, address, telephone number, fax number, right? And I was like, man, I'm gonna call this dude. Like, Mike, let me take down that info. So I wrote it all down, and I called Rob. And I had a habit. You got to understand something. This is something I used to do quite often because, and I highly recommend this to your listeners. If there's something in your sites that you are in trepidation is creeping in on you, whether you should or shouldn't, I always say you should, especially when it comes to taking a risk, because in this case, it was call Rob Liefeld. I've also, when I met Jack Kirby, I walked up to him and I asked him for his phone number. He gave it to me. I also, when I used to go through the comic trades, anytime an artist would mention where they're from, I would call information and call them. Like I would call Mike Zeck, I'd call Art Adams. I'd call, like, because they were in the phone book. That's what I did because I needed all the info. So circling back with Rob, I just said, hey man, this is Dan Fraga. And he's like, who? I said, the kid you met this weekend, I filmed you doing a portfolio review. Oh, yeah, that guy. Like, yeah, man. How'd you get my number? And I explained to him what had happened. He's like, yeah, I better not draw on the back of those anymore.
Yeah.
And
Lesson learned.
yeah, I said, listen, do you mind if I said, I'm seeing your fax number here. Do you mind if I occasionally fax you my latest stuff and call you up and get some feedback from you? And Rob was really gracious. He said, yeah, sure, fine. Yeah, that's great. And of course I started calling more and more. And it was wonderful because I got to get a lot of ground floor information, like when he started New Mutants, and when Todd would ink him on a cover, I would call and be like, yeah, oh, man, this is the greatest thing. What's going on with Todd? What's going on with Jim? And like I'd get all this sort of insider information, and it really stoked my fires. And I got to a point where I was a pest, kind of like overstep my boundaries a little bit. And Rob handed off the phone to Marat Michaels, who was Rob's assistant at the time. And Marat and I forged a friendship. And I remember I saw them at San Diego Comic-Con 91. It was the first year that they had it at the convention center. And I was sending my samples to DC and talking to them, and they were giving me all kinds of inventory stories to do. So I was getting closer to breaking in. So I see Marat and Rob, and that's when Rob tells me about this company he's going to start with Erik Larsen and Todd McFarlane. It was just the three of them at first. I said, man, that's really interesting. So they invited me. I think I have it somewhere around here. No, that's beef jerky. I have it around here somewhere, but
That's the title of this episode. No, that's beef jerky.
yeah, no, that's beef jerky. Yeah, here it is, man. Right here. So this is one of the comics I used to sell in high school. It's called The Adventurer.
Holy crap.
But in here I have I always tell my kids, your dad was in the paper 3 times, front page, right? So this was the first time. Right here, 1989.
Wow.
It was the first time my work saw print. I did a daily strip in my town newspaper. And then they followed up like a year later. Right here, it says spinach inspires cartoonist. That's a long story. But this is the one right here. Teenage artist career hits the big time. I had been hired by Rob to join Image Comics, and the person who is responsible for my hire, or at least putting it in Rob's ear that he should hire me, was Marat. So Marat said, hey man, you got this book, we need someone else who can draw, and Dan can draw, and Rob agreed and said, if you're willing to relocate down here, you have a job. Which was great because I was getting to a point where I thought maybe it wasn't going to happen, and I had enlisted into the Navy. And how
old were you at this time then?
18. I just graduated high school.
Damn.
And it was November or December of 91. I was supposed to go in, and they have this thing called MEPS for the Navy, where you go in and you take a physical, and then you put your hand up and say, you swear yourself into the Navy.
Yep.
Yeah. And I was going to go in on Wednesday. I was about to go in on a Wednesday, but 2 days prior on a Monday is when I got the call from Marat and Rob asking me if I would be willing to move to Southern California to join the studio. So I called the recruiter. I said, am I obligated in any way? And he said, I'll use the 2021. That ain't a good look, is basically what he said to me, but you're not obligated. And I said, well, I will not be there. So I was originally slated to work on a book called The Odd. And it was Robin Marat's interpretation of the Wizard of Oz. So, Toto was a wolf. Dorothy was like a badass. The Cowardly Lion was like a feral beast. The Tin Man was kind of Iron Man like. Scarecrow was real creepy, and like Scarecrow from Batman, and that's essentially what I was hired to do. And I I went down there in February of '92 to kind of scout it out, to see what where I'd live, and it happened that the weekend that I was there was when the news broke that 7 artists from Marvel Comics were forming Image Comics, and CNN had gone down to Rob's studio where all the 7 Image founders were, and CNN had come. And if you ever see that footage, you can look it up on YouTube. I'm in it. I'm like sitting on a beanbag, as CNN is going 7 artists, blah blah blah. And it was a very surreal experience that evening when we all had dinner, because um, even to this day, I consider myself a giant fan, of comics, fan of individuals that make comics. And especially at that time, I had just graduated high school, like, a few months prior, maybe 8 months prior to sitting there at a table with Marat and the 7 Image founders, having Chinese dinner and just looking around the table at sort of the pantheon of comic book greats, especially at the time, and thinking, how did I get here? So that's how I broke in. That is the short, long story of how I broke in.
No, man, that
Step
was
one. Step one, don't join the Navy. That's the step one.
Step one.
well. There goes our sponsorship with the Navy. Thanks, Danny.
No, we still
That's
got the
all right,
Army.
man.
Don't worry about it. We still got the Army.
Best. Well, that's my saying that I always say at the end of my shows is always be and do your best. So that's kind of Army like, the best you can be.
Yeah, be all you can be. That's right.
Yeah.
No, that's a great story. That's great. Like I've followed your career. I've done a little research, but much of that I didn't know. It's great to hear all of that.
Oh, thanks, man.
Now, I mean, after all this, you went to stardom with Bloodstrike, and then you started going into like other aspects. I forgot what I was going to say, so let's restart this. After you started with Bloodstrike, you started doing other projects, and you've transitioned, like we mentioned earlier. You went to Spider-Man and Wolverine. You've done stuff for DC, things like that. During this, now what, 3 decades that you've been making comics? What comics have you? Years. Yeah. What book would you say you're most proud of working on?
Well, it's a complex thing, I would have to, like, I want to say Black Flag, my creator-owned book, and that was the direct byproduct of restlessness. When I worked on Bloodstrike, I was working from Rob's layouts, and Rob's layouts are really tight, and my natural instinct is not to draw in the way Rob draws. He draws arms a different way than I draw, legs a different way. His gestures were good, but I was young and I didn't really know how to translate layouts in a way that I could now. Now I would just look at it as a suggestion and do my own thing if I ever worked from someone else's layouts. But at the time, the process was, in the way the process always worked at Extreme, was if Rob did a layout, it was enlarged on a photocopier. An assistant would light box it lightly on a piece of paper and then hand it off to you, and you went and drew the thing. So I was, drawing over that stuff, and it felt very restrictive. And then that was the first 3 issues. And then on the 4th issue, Rob had hired Keith Giffen, fantastic guy. Keith, did the layouts on Lobo for Simon Biz. So, his layouts are good, but he drew in a totally different way than I did. And he had shifted the book over from being this sort of military, kind of kick-ass book, which was very, very popular in 92, 93, that, big guns, pouches, that sort of thing. And he turned it into more of a zombie book where guts and blood and like people dragging their half bodies around. And I was like, man, I'm not really into that. And I'm not into, Keith's drawing over Keith's stuff, because it's really different than the way I drew. So I created Black Flag, and Rob let me do that. But if it was a piece of work that wasn't one that I created, the book I'm absolutely the most proud of, and I get a lot of feedback because people can feel the love, is Kid Supreme. Kid Supreme was a book where Rob basically gave me bare bones concept. Basically, it's a teenager with the powers of Supreme, and I said, well, what if he had to hide it like Peter Parker, and what if he lived in a small town and went to high school, and what if his villains uh, were kind of more like Spider-Man's villains and less like cosmic, but more like Spider-Man's villains. So I got to create a bunch of villains that were very much inspired. I mean, I had a guy called the Buzzard, the Vulture. You know, I had a guy named Blacktop, which was like the Sandman. I had Kilowatt, which was like the Shocker, and I had a guy called Reptile, which was like the Lizard. So you know, I was having fun doing my thing, but I put a lot of my own experiences growing up. You know, I was not in the 2021 sort of way, but in the sort of way that every kid in the 80s and 70s that was into comics and was skinny and small, I was bullied and I was made fun of because I like comics, and you know, I didn't do the standard stuff. So I made I made this character bullied, you know, and deep down inside, like same thing with Peter Parker. Flash Thompson would pick on him, and we all knew he was Spider-Man, and that sort of restraint. So I put that in there. I put a lot of my hometown monuments in it, and put all kinds of experiences that I had in the book, and it made it very authentic. You know, I was coming from a real place on that book, so that would be my favorite book that I did. I mean, I basically I don't want to say I created it because I did not create Kid Supreme, but I created the situation within that book, and one that I'm very proud of.
Oh, you were mentioning. Oh, go ahead, Danny.
No, I was just gonna say because I thought when I seen Kid Supreme, it being an image book that people would kind of compare it to Invincible now. So it's kind of in that vein where a young kid with superpowers, and they're both inspired by Spider-Man, and I love
thought the
that.
same thing when I read Invincible. I thought, man, Kirkman must have loved Kid Supreme.
Yeah.
You know, and like when I read Kick-Ass, I thought, hey, Mark Miller must have really loved my book SWAT, because it's the exact same concept but 10 years earlier.
Right.
You know, so yeah, it's interesting.
Do you ever look back at how comics have evolved now? Because you were mentioning how when you were growing up, when you were reading comics, you would get bullied because it was, geeky and nerdy. Do you ever look back and be like, damn, how did this? I mean, I know it's mostly because of movies, but do you ever look back and be like, damn, 15, 20 years ago, I would have got my ass beat for reading a comic. Now,
oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's cool.
Yeah, no, it's nuts. I mean, we kind of like, as geek culture, if you read X-Men, it was kind of like, you guys talk about Blurred and the tests you got to take. That was like X-Men was kind of like, oh, you like comics? What do you like? And if X-Men wasn't on their list, you were like, but man, 89 was like the, I don't know, like for the gay community, they have pride parades, 89 was like the comic book parade because Batman was coming out. And instead of going to your specialty store to get your Batman shirt, which, Graffiti Designs had the market on, you were seeing Batman shirts at Macy's and JCPenney and Sears, and like Batman suddenly became mainstream, and you're like, yeah, I can wear my Batman shirt, and people will be like, yeah, he just has Batmania, and it was kind of like that was like most freeing year. 89 was such a good year to be a comic book fan. But yeah, it is interesting, now. But also, like, the one thing that's funny to me about, the quote unquote geek culture, now you got TV shows and dedicated Twitters and YouTube shows and all this stuff. The funny stuff to me, I have like an what do you call it, a little side story that it very much like it, right? So my stepson, he's 16 now, but when he was 7, Clone Wars was very popular, and I used to take him to school, and before school would let in, they had a gate that was locked that someone had to come and unlock, and a lot of kids and parents were waiting out there, and a bunch of kids were talking about Jango Fett and Boba Fett and all of that. And I said, hey kids, you know what's crazy is Boba Fett is the only clone that hadn't been doctored by that. And they're like, he's not a clone. I said, yeah, he is. He's a perfect copy of Jango. Boba is Jango. And they're like, you don't know what you're talking about. And like, here's a bunch of little kids telling me that I don't know Star Wars and like that Star Wars isn't for me. And I'm like, yo, man, I saw Star Wars in the theater when I was 4, man. Like it's kind of what it feels like sometimes to be a comic book fan these days. Is like you encounter some people that are part of geek culture and they try to check you and you're like, listen.
Yeah.
And anime is the same way now too. I have my middle daughter is the anime nerd in the house, but I'm like, listen now, I've been doing this a long time.
Yeah.
Don't try to tell me. Try to tell me My Hero Academia isn't influenced by Naruto, which was influenced by Dragon Ball. Don't try to tell me. Right. I know.
Yeah, it's funny though because I have to say, man, full disclosure, I was a little close-minded on new anime because like I felt like I lived in the glory days. You know, I had Akira, I had Fist of the North Star, I had Vampire Hunter D, Ninja Scroll, Macross. Star Blazers, Bubblegum Crisis, like this is where I came from. So, and Dragon Ball, right? Dragon Ball was like on the end. So when I saw Naruto, I was like, okay, whatever. You know, like And then my 7-year-old son introduced me to My Hero Academia, and I was like, I don't need this, man. It's just a retread. And then I sat and watched it, and outside of Deku's whiny ass voice, I really enjoy that show. Same with One Punch Man. Really enjoy One Punch Man. Demon Slayer. I'm all in with my kids now. So they did show me the way. You know, so it's a little this and that, I guess.
Naruto was the one for me. I don't know how it happened, but I got converted with Naruto from being a big Dragon Ball Z fan, and I ended up converting my older cousins who were more like you, who are like, nah, like they were the ones bringing me the VHSs of, Fist of the North Star and stuff like that. And, I was like, nah, you got to check out Naruto. It's actually pretty good, man. You got to check it out. And they ended up.
Hard.
So,
absolutely. But that back in the day, that like it was, like you said, it's VHS, and it was usually that logo that said manga that caught fire, and that's all you got. It was very, very limited. And then, of course, like every now and then, some of the naughty stuff came through, like the Blue Girl and all that other stuff. And you're like, whoa, what is this? Not into the tentacles, but it got around.
Hey, there's something for everybody.
That's true.
Variety, it's what it is.
Yeah, man.
So we do a little segment on our show called Danny's Quick Takes, right? So what we'll do really quick is I got 5 questions for you. I've been stalking your social media, for the past couple of days, and I got some questions for you, and you just have to come up with an answer for us off the top of your head. You'll get 45 seconds, and
for all 5.
No, for each you get.
Okay. I'm like 9 seconds a question. All right, but okay, yeah, 45. That's great, man.
No, we're switching up now. We're gonna do 9 seconds for each one. Let's do that.
Okay, let's go.
It'll be one word answers each one.
I gotta talk like the Micro Machines guy.
God.
And then it's like done. Yeah.
So here we go. We'll do first question. All right. So I saw that you retweeted Will Smith's passing up on the Matrix. I recently rewatched the Matrix, and it was just a great film. And he says, he's even though he thinks about it a lot, he doesn't regret it, but he thinks that he would have destroyed the film franchise. So I was thinking, are there any opportunities that you wish that you had taken, or anything that you regret passing up on?
Well, first off, and I'm going to go as fast as I can. It's 100% true. In fact, I was working with Jada Pinkett, his wife, when they were considering it, and she told me the exact same pitch that Will gave in that tweet. About the cameras and floating in space, and she said it just seemed weird, and they kept saying we're your batteries, and she's like, yeah, we just had to pass on that. As far as stuff that I could have taken and passed on, no, I'm very happy with my career.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It's great to like. I couldn't imagine because I actually enjoyed the Wild Wild West. I really enjoyed that film. You know, that's the film that he always talks about. Stop it, Kyrun. Now, I
The
enjoyed
soundtrack was the soundtrack was fire. The movie
It
itself
was
was
It was a funny
disco.
yes.
it was a funny movie. I liked it.
Yo, man, that was that little backstory. The guy who produced it, I don't remember if it's Goober or Peters. He was a producer on Batman, and he kept trying to get Tim Burton to put this giant wooden spider in the movie, and Tim was like, nah. And then it's just funny that like he produces another movie and he's like, listen, I need a giant
I got
wooden
this chance
spider.
now.
Yeah, no, it's like there's so much goofballing in that movie, like the little neck things and like, you know, yeah, crazy stuff.
I love it. All right, so question number 2. I've been making comics for almost 10 years. Kyrun's been in it for how many years now, Kyrun? You've been making comics?
About 8 years now.
About 8 years.
Yeah.
And one thing I noticed is that there are groups of people. There are people who collect comics, and then there are people who read comics, and then there are the people that are in between. So I want to know if you could only, have one of those groups of people who collect comics or people who read comics, which group would you keep and why?
Read comics, man. And my answer is, I got this spinner rack behind me, right? And I have comics in there that if they were slabbed, they'd be worth that spinner rack. If it was all slabbed and in good shape like a collector, that spinner rack's worth $100,000. But the fact remains, those are my comics I bought off the stands when they came out. I have a Hulk 340 that's signed by Todd that I rolled up and put in my back pocket because I loved that comic. I don't make comics to be put away and hidden. I make comics to be enjoyed and read. So I pick readers.
Absolutely. And I agree with you. Kyrun is a collector. He doesn't even read comics, but I enjoy reading
the amount of lies you spreading on this episode. If you weren't on the other side of the country, I'd kick your ass. All right.
Yeah.
All right. Question number 3. So this probably out of the 11 episodes that we've done, half the people I've talked to about a specific movie. I scrolled through your social media and I saw that you posted a GIF of my all-time favorite movie, Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon. It's my favorite movie, and I always like to ask people who are aware of that film and who love that film, would you take Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon or The Karate Kid? Which one is the better film?
Oh man. Why'd you do this? Why'd you
it's
do
his
this?
thing. He always does this.
Oh man. The message in both is very similar, which is to find deep down inside you who you are, and recognize who you are. Of course, Bruce Leroy found the glow and that the belt was from JCPenney and the fortune cookies were garbage, and we had vanity. And shaking your pizza down to Papa's Pizza and all that goodness. But I'll tell you, that look of Mr. Miyagi when Daniel wins and he turns and he does the nod, every single time, tears. I'm going with Karate Kid. Sorry, man.
Sorry.
Damn right at the buzzer on that 45 seconds.
Hold on, guys. Sorry. What's up? Yes.
I gotta agree. That look of Miyagi that gets you. Yeah.
I disagree.
I love him. Yo, hey,
he just
got the glow. Too many good moments. I mean, yeah, too many good moments. Who's the greatest? Show enough. Now kiss my Converse.
And if you guys didn't know, Pat Morita actually grew up here in the Sacramento area. That's why he's so great. So just letting you know.
Okay. All right. I'll let y'all have it. All right. So question number 4. Oh, so like I mentioned, you have a great career in storyboarding for film also. So if you had to pick one to do for the rest of your life and you couldn't do the other, would you pick storyboarding for film or comics?
Comics.
100%.
That's it. Comics, and both are very rewarding. I enjoy storyboards because I'm part of a process. I'm a team member, and I help facilitate a lot of stuff, whether it's planning or assisting a camera person knowing what the angle is, or an actor knowing what their scene is. It's rewarding in that way, but there's something amazing about comics, full authorship, where you get to do the whole shebang and share it with everybody. So comics, man.
I love it. I love it. Great answer. All right, and last but not least, your character Rascal came to Earth, just happened to come to Earth on my little brother's actual birthday. So 4/20/1993, I believe the date was.
Whoa.
And I just thought it was I just thought that it was amazing, that something was a coincidence like that. But I like to put like dates and stuff like that that are significant to me in my comics as little Easter eggs and stuff. And I try to include them just as talking points and stuff like that for later. So I was wondering, are there any Easter eggs that you put in your comics, or is that not something that you like to do?
Ha 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 ha! I'm the Easter Bunny, bro. I put Easter eggs in all of my comics. In fact, in the Black Flag series, there are Easter eggs all over the place. In the new series I'm working on now, there's Easter eggs all over the place. Another Easter egg that a lot of people don't know about is the late great Mike Turner and I were buddies, and I used to hide the number 21 in my comic for him, and he used to hide the number 23 in his comics for me. And whenever our books would come out, we would call each other and like play the game of where's the number. In fact, if you look at the cover of Fathom #1, there's a hidden 23 in there. But I'm the Easter Bunny. Oh, hey.
I love it. I love it. See, now I got it. I'm gonna go back and look for those. I love seeing stuff like that. And I think one of the things that film did very well about translating comics, especially the Marvel films. They have done that Easter egg hunt. They made that Easter egg hunt fun for the viewers, and that's great. So that was awesome. That was our quick takes, and I'll hand the show back over to Kyrun now.
All right.
Quick
takes.
Those quick takes were brought to you by the numbers 21 and 23 today, and the letter B.
And used to be the Navy, but now it's the Army.
Now it's the Army. The asthma thing kicked out a bunch of people in the 90s and 2000s, man. It was ridiculous.
They didn't want us running around with our inhalers going.
It was a perception thing, I think. I don't think it was actually anything. Because now if you got asthma, you can join the military. But I think it was a branding thing. They didn't want the asthma inhalers make you look weak, I guess. So I really think that's what it was.
All right, well, let's get back to Dan instead of me. Let's talk about actually something that Danny brought up during his quick takes. You are also a storyboard artist, and you've done storyboards for a lot of different series, movies, things like that. Yeah. How different is it doing storyboards to comic books as far as the process themselves? I know you said you like drawing comics more, but how different is it, the process of making a storyboard compared to a comic?
Well, first off, I love them both. You made me make the choice. If I could, just do one. I love them both. It's an interesting topic. In fact, it's one that I've talked to another friend of mine that was a comic book artist who also storyboards now. And he was asking me what it was like to be back drawing comics again. And I said, it's really weird because going from comics into boarding felt like an easier transition than going from boarding back into comics. And the reason for that is that with storyboards, you're dealing with a fixed frame. You're working with the same aspect ratio. If you're doing 2:3:5, you're staying there, unless it's like Galaxy Quest, where they went from TV to wide. They did a little gimmick there, but For the
Underrated film, by the way. Love that.
Super underrated.
Wait, how's that underrated?
But
Everybody loves that though. Like everybody talks
everybody
about
that
that.
loves it, but some people go, "What's that?"
Yeah.
Never give up, never surrender.
That's right. Just punch myself in the chest, man. But you're dealing with a fixed frame. You're also dealing with camera movement and character movement, and you also are knowing that that eventually there will be a soundtrack or sound effects on top of it. So the fact that it's a fixed frame means you're really dealing with the idea of cinematic storytelling. And when the camera moves, you have an idea of geography and that sort of thing. But here's the other part: it doesn't matter who talks first in a storyboard frame, because their lips are moving and you see them moving, and they're talking. And it's a fixed frame, and it's a single fixed frame. You're composing for a frame and composing for a sequence. And as long as you kind of hang on the rules of filmic grammar, which is like not crossing the 180 line, there's typical coverage of over the shoulders, a master, movement for emphasis of emotion, or movement to increase the action. Coming from comics, it's much easier. Going back from storyboards into comics, it's very different. And like I said, in comics, the person that is talking first is generally the person on the left side of the panel, right? Because we read left to right, top to bottom, at least in the Western stuff. In manga, of course, it's the other way, right to left, top to bottom. But you're also dealing with the design of a page. It's not just a fixed frame. The frame's contexts, in the context of what frame comes before and after, or what frames come before and after, are very important in comics. You have to be able to lead the eye on a two-dimensional page. So you're actually working with graphic design. You're working with blocking of character placement. If you want that character who's talking first to be here, even though they were the second character talking, you have to do it in a way that leads the eye. Otherwise, it creates confusion. So I'll tell you, going back. And here's the other thing: word balloons. Okay, that's a big difference too.
Gotta leave space for the word balloons.
You gotta leave space for the word balloons, and I learned that the hard way. I mean, it's kind of my fault, writer's fault, but when I went back to He-Man, Tim Seeley, incredibly talented guy, was jamming like 3 pages worth of stuff into every page. So I was really trying to like mash everything I could into these pages. I was very happy with the way they turned out when I was done. Artistically, I'm like, the eye flows and all this stuff. But then when I saw it in print, there's all these word balloons over heads and over details and things. And I was like, I forgot about word balloons, So you got to think about that. So there's a lot of similarities, but they are very, very different from each other.
I love it. One of the best things about comics is also one of the worst things about comics. You can literally do anything in a comic book. Like there's no restriction. You can have cameras on top here, then through walls and all kinds. You can do anything.
There are ways. I mean, if you look, my favorite comic of all times is Frank Miller's The Dark Knight that came out in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that's really interesting about his book is he created limits for himself. He was working on a 4x4 grid, and it was 16 panels. But what he would do if he wanted a bigger panel, he would just combo up 2 of them or 3 of them. But he always stayed within those parameters. So he actually gave himself limits. I see you have a keyboard back there, so you're into music production, right?
Yep.
Now, if you had, I don't know what you use. I use Logic. I use Fruity Loops, but imagine though that you only had in your drum kit, you had 10 sounds. Okay. And in your basses, you had 5 sounds, and your keys, you had 5 sounds. You would make music using just those, and you would make it work for you, and it would be your sound. But if you had thousands and thousands of options on every sound, you would be sitting there going, this snare, nah, this snare, no, this snare.
Take
Oh,
forever.
what about this snare? And suddenly you're creating this sort of like paralysis for yourself because you didn't give yourself limits. So
Absolutely.
when in regard to best thing and worst thing about comics is the sky's the limit. Give yourself limits and you'll find it to be slightly easier to manage.
Absolutely. One of the best things I learned. I work full time as a graphic designer for the Department of Veterans Affairs now. And one of the best things that I learned is I threw that in there, Kyrun. It's okay.
I'm just amazed at how many references to the Army and Navy and in the military in general there's been on this
it's literally
episode.
half my life. It's like half my life.
Man.
I have to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I think the branding guideline that we developed is so helpful, not just for me, but to provide consistency and to build trust with our veterans and the people that we communicate to, because they know that if they see these certain colors enough, or they see this, certain font or logo, if they don't see the font that we use, then they know it's not from us. Once you build that, brand trust. But it also helps with, because you got to meet your deadlines. You have to meet your deadlines. So that paralysis that you talked about of choice, if I can't go outside of this guideline, it helps me to do my job faster and more efficiently. So absolutely.
That's what I tell people too, like that aren't musicians or, that aren't artists. I said, if someone puts, 5 Blu-rays in front of you, how long would it take you to pick a movie? And they're like, I don't know, maybe less than a couple of minutes. And I said, but if they put 5,000 Blu-rays in front of you, how long would it take you to choose? Not only just to go through them, but like I like that one, but I like that one, but I like that one. Mm-hmm. Right? Give them less choices.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, well, we have a couple more minutes here, so I do want to get at least one more question that's not comics related in before. Along with comics, you also expressed many times that you have a love for hip hop and rap.
Oh yeah, yes.
Who is your mixtape? By the way, it was pretty good.
That was old school, man. 1994.
So, who is your favorite hip hop artist currently? And then growing up, who was your favorite hip hop artist?
Well, the answer is always Rakim. But
like no matter what, it's always Rakim.
Yeah, no, he's the GOAT. And I got the chance to hang out with him a couple times, and he's everything that you'd want him to be. Let's see. Working today, it's a toss up between Kendrick and J. Cole. I think both of those guys really are perfect examples of what I like in hip hop. Really sound production, really insightful, thought provoking lyrics. Mm-hmm. I think is guilty pleasure. I like Drake. I know that's not a popular answer, but he sells, right? Like there's something. I'm looking forward to Donda. Looking forward to Donda over and over again. Thank you, Kanye. But as a kid, I liked Rakim. There was a rapper named Paris. I don't know if you remember Paris.
Mm-hmm.
He did a song, Devil Made Me Do It. Mm-hmm. EPMD was great too with Eric Sermon. I have favorite producers. DJ Premier was up there. Dilla. Jay Dilla is up there.
Dilla. Yeah.
I also like Logic. Especially his earlier mixtape stuff, like the Young Sinatra stuff and the Young Broken Infamous, like the early stuff. I liked, of course, who didn't like Run DMC, LL Cool J. Those were, mainstays. But I grew up, that's the thing, Kyrun. I grew up near where you're at. I grew up in Martinez, which is only a couple hours from Sacktown, and we got guys like E40 and Ant Banks and Too Short and Digital Underground. So we got those sort of local flavors. But also being the West Coast, we got infused with all the Death Row, Dog Pound, DJ Quick, like all that stuff. And the New York stuff, like the really good New York stuff, like Nas and Big L and those guys, they didn't play on the radio as much on the West. You know, you had to go. I remember the first time I heard "Protect Your Neck" by by Wu-Tang, and was like, "What is this?" And it played like one time at like midnight on KSOL, which was turned into Wild 107. It used to be 94.9, and then it turned into Wild 107. But I heard it and I was like, "What is that?" You know?
Yeah, it really wasn't until like the mid to late '90s where they really started playing East Coast stuff over here.
That's a complete different sound right there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I got bit by the bug the first time I heard Sugar Hill Gang. You know, I got bit by the bug, and of course Blondie's Rapture, 5-5 Freddy. You know, like that I got bit. You know, and of course like 82, 83, we had it was a cultural phenomenon. The some of the elements, breakdancing and graffiti. You know, had Style Wars and Wild Style, and of course Beat Street breaking. Which were crazy. If you look at Beat Street and Breakin', which are like seminal, hip hop movies, they were produced by Jewish dudes. Like these dudes were like, this looks like something we can make some money on. You know,
Pretty
it's
much.
crazy though, but it's true. Like, go watch the credits. You're like, whoa, shit. Like, but of course,
it worked though.
It was weird though because there were I'm old, not old, I don't feel old, but grew up during the heyday of breakdancing, and it was such a weird thing to have go to one place and the breakdance surface of preference was cardboard, because if you came in with linoleum, you were whack, but then you could go to another place where they were laying down the linoleum, and if you came with cardboard, they're like, get that whack shit out of here. We do linoleum. You could spend more on this shit. And it was like, it's like, are you both right? Or are you both wrong? It was a weird thing, linoleum or cardboard. I didn't care as long as I was a pop locker. I was never really good on the floor.
What?
I'm not spending on anything anyway.
Wait, let's go back to you're a pop locker. I want to see something.
I did this old like King Tut routine when I was a kid. It was like, a lot of hands and pop locking and like the shaking, ozone turbo type shit.
All right.
Babadoo.
I love it.
Well, it's been fun, man. You got any more questions for Mr. Fragaboom before we let him go?
I'm all good, man. This was great. Like I said, I appreciate you taking the time for us this morning, and next time we'll make sure we get your times right.
All right. Yeah, not a problem, man. I was actually like, oh, okay, I'm doing this at 10 tonight. I'll have some coffee, not a problem. But AM is great, you guys. I'm looking forward.
Yeah, for y'all, it's great. For me, I'm tired.
Yeah, 8 a.m. over there for you.
Yeah.
Danny, where are you at, man?
I'm in North Carolina, so
you're north of me, man. All right, I'm here in Georgia.
Oh, nice, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah,
man. See, my sister lives down there, so I've been
we're trying to plan. If you get down this way, let me know, man.
Absolutely, I will.
Just reach out, but send me that blurred test, man, because I believe it or not, I am a member of many blurred Facebook groups and big fan of Black Twitter. So because I don't give a fuck about melanin, man. Like for me, I love culture, man. That's culture, my thing.
Right?
Oh, it should be.
Yeah.
All right. Well, where can we find any of your current work? If you have a website, social media.
Well, right now I have an active campaign on Indiegogo. You just search for Dan Fraga's Black Flag on Indiegogo. If you search for Fragaboom, Fragaboom on YouTube, you can find me there. And on Twitter, it's Couch Doodles, and same thing on Instagram. It used to be Fragaboom on Instagram, and then it wasn't. But if you guys want to see some freestyle raps, and I'm talking true off the top of the dome, legit freestyle rapping, Fragaboom 23 on Instagram. But I warn people, it's not for the faint of heart.
Well, now I gotta go look.
Yeah. But if you downloaded my mixtape, man, download the sketch tracks, because I'm making a new mixtape that's coming out. So there's like 45 tracks on that other one.
Awesome. Love
Yeah,
it.
all crafted by my hands, man. It's good stuff.
All right, Danny, what about you? Where can we find your amazing work?
You guys know me, the Ace Blade on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok, and Danny J Quick on Facebook.
Oh yeah,
All
DJ
right, and you
Quick,
can-
man.
That's right.
Tonight's the night.
That's it.
All right, you can find my work at tauruscomics.com. I am on Twitter and Instagram and at Facebook at Taurus Comics. If this is your first time listening to this podcast, you can go back and listen to other podcasts on iTunes, Spotify, all your major podcast platforms. Just search for Tales Podcast, number 4, TALES podcast, or go to fourtalespodcast.com. We do appreciate all the reviews that you guys have been doing. Everybody liking our stuff on YouTube, which it's still growing, but we're glad for everybody that's viewed our work there. But for right now, we want to say sayonara, goodbye, and please take care of yourselves.
Music provided by my brother, Quix Made It. Find him online in YouTube, Instagram, and SoundCloud.